Bonjour tout le monde and welcome to this video on expressions of time and duration in French. So somebody asked me recently to do a video on the words pendant, depuis and il y a, and I thought it would be a good idea to take that a step further and add a few extra words, hopefully to help you understand those a little bit better as well. So as you can see, we've got a fair few words to get through, so we're going to jump straight in with the words quand and lorsque, both of which mean when, and in many cases are entirely interchangeable. So, for example, we could say Je ferai le travail quand j'aurai assez de temps. Je ferai le travail quand j'aurai assez de temps, meaning I will do the work when I have enough time. Or we could say Je ferai le travail lorsque j'aurai assez de temps. Je ferai le travail lorsque j'aurai assez de temps, and that means exactly the same thing. So this is pretty useful for those of you doing exams or doing formal writing where you want to avoid repetition. You can switch between using quand and lorsque in these cases. I should also point out the use of the future tense in both verbs. Remember, as far as French is concerned, neither of these actions has happened yet. I haven't done the work, nor do I have enough time yet. And so both actions exist in the future, and so we have to use the future tense for both. The only time when quand and lorsque are not interchangeable is with questions. The only word we can use to ask the question when is quand. So, for example, we can say quand seras-tu là? Quand seras-tu là? When will you be there? We cannot say lorsque seras-tu là? That simply does not work. Then we have the words depuis and pendant, which have a bit of a reputation for being difficult to translate. If we look them up in the dictionary, we'll find that depuis means since and pendant means during. The problem is, though, quite often these both translate to the word for in English, so it's less about their denotations and more about how to use them. As a rule of thumb, I usually say that depuis is used to talk about unfinished actions, things that are still happening, whereas pendant is used to talk about actions that exist in a fixed time period. So, for example, we could say Je travaille à la banque depuis 3 ans. Je travaille à la banque depuis 3 ans, and this means I have been working at the bank for 3 years. And in brackets we have J'y travaille toujours, I still work there. And that's the important thing here. I'm still working at the bank, according to this sentence. And that's why we're using the present tense. Okay, this is still happening, so it exists in the present, and therefore French says use the present tense. So literally what we say is I work at the bank since 3 years. If, however, we say J'ai travaillé à la banque pendant 3 ans, J'ai travaillé à la banque pendant 3 ans, this is I worked at the bank for 3 years, and therefore je n'y travaille plus. I don't work there anymore. And this is why here, instead of using the present tense, we're using the passé composé. Passé composé is used to talk about completed actions, and since I don't work there anymore, this action is most certainly complete. So, for example, maybe I started working at the bank in the year 2000 and then left in 2003. We could also talk about events as well as just time periods. So, for example, we could say Tu te plains depuis la réunion. Tu te plains depuis la réunion. This is you have been complaining since the meeting. So in this case, depuis does translate quite nicely to the word since, but notice still we're using the present tense because the implication is that you are still complaining. However, if we say Tu te plaignais pendant la réunion, Tu te plaignais pendant la réunion, this means you were complaining during the meeting. So this time we're using the imperfect. We could use the passé composé as well. That would give a slightly different meaning, but the important thing is this is in the past because we're talking about a fixed time period, this time from the start of the meeting until the end of it. Then we have the word pour, which of course just means for, but when we're talking about time periods, we're quite limited as to how we can use it. We can't just use pour whenever we say for in English. Pour in French is only used to refer to actions in the future, and it's also interchangeable with the word pendant. So, for example, we could say Je vais habiter en France pour 3 mois. Je vais habiter en France pour 3 mois. I'm going to live in France for 3 months. Alternatively, we could say Je vais habiter en France pendant 3 mois. Je vais habiter en France pendant 3 mois, and that means exactly the same thing because, of course, we have a fixed time period. In this case, those 3 months. I should say that pour in this case is a little bit informal, so if you're writing some academic writing or something that needs to be a little bit more formal, you should use pendant, but in the spoken everyday language, pour is perfectly acceptable. Equally, you could say on travaillera pour quelques heures, on travaillera pour quelques heures, we will work for a few hours, or on travaillera pendant quelques heures, we will work for a few hours. The important thing with all of these is that we're talking about the future. And that's another benefit of using pendant here, is because we can use pendant in other tenses other than the future, whereas pour is limited to the future tense. Then we have il y a, which isn't that difficult. It basically means ago. The only difficulty with this one is the word order, because in French we use il y a, then the duration, whereas in English we say the duration and then the word ago. So for example, il a acheté sa voiture il y a 2 ans. Il a acheté sa voiture il y a 2 ans. He bought his car 2 years ago. Notice we have il y a ago, then 2 ans, 2 years. Or we could say nous sommes partis il y a 5 minutes. Nous sommes partis il y a 5 minutes. We left 5 minutes ago. Again, literally we say ago, 5 minutes. Other than that, il y a and ago are very much the same. Next, we have the distinction between dans and en. In many cases, they both mean in, but when we're talking about time, we can't use them interchangeably. Dans is used to talk about when an action will start in the future, whereas en is used to talk about how long it will take to complete an action. So we could say in French, je ferai mes devoirs dans 10 minutes. Je ferai mes devoirs dans 10 minutes. I will do my homework in 10 minutes. This sentence in English is actually ambiguous. Does it mean I'm going to wait 10 minutes and then do my homework? Or does it mean that it will take me 10 minutes to do my homework? In French, there's no ambiguity, and that's because we have this distinction between dans and en. And in this case, the dans tells us that I'm going to start doing my homework in 10 minutes time. So I'm saying nothing about how long it will take me. I'm just saying I'm going to wait 10 minutes and then I'll start doing my homework. If, however, we say je ferai mes devoirs en 10 minutes, je ferai mes devoirs en 10 minutes, this means I will do my homework in 10 minutes, meaning it will take me 10 minutes to do my homework regardless of when I start. So I could start in 20 minutes, in an hour, in 10 years. Either way, it will take me 10 minutes to do it. Then we have expressions such as ça fait, duration que, il y a, duration que, and voilà, duration que. Don't be daunted by these, they all mean the same thing. They're used to say that it's been so long since something happened, or something has been done for a certain length of time. So we've already seen expressions that we can use to say these things. These are just nice alternatives. So for example, you could say ça fait 5 ans que j'apprends le français. Ça fait 5 ans que j'apprends le français, meaning I have been learning French for 5 years. So you could use depuis and say j'apprends le français depuis 5 ans. But if you want to change it up a little bit, you can use ça fait 5 ans que. In the same way, you could use il y a 6 mois que je ne l'ai pas vu. Il y a 6 mois que je ne l'ai pas vu. It has been 6 months since I saw her, or I haven't seen her in 6 months. Notice the use of the negative here. If we translate it as it's been 6 months since I saw her, in English we don't use the negative. In French, we do. Or we can use voilà, which again has very much the same meaning. Voilà 10 ans que l'on se connaît. Voilà 10 ans que l'on se connaît. We've known each other for 10 years. So there we have all of the expressions of time and duration that we're going to go through today. Of course, there are many, many more, but hopefully that has helped you with just a handful of them. As usual, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I will get back to you as soon as I can. And until next time, à bientôt.